I watched my son cut his wedding cake while my plate sat in front of me, cold mashed potatoes congealed into a gray lump beside dried-out chicken. Everyone else had been served hot meals an hour ago. I was last. Always last. When I finally got my food, my son walked past with his new bride, glanced at my plate, and laughed. "She's used to eating what life leaves behind," he announced loudly. The whole table roared with laughter. I set down my fork, picked up my purse, and walked out. Nobody noticed. The drive home felt longer than usual. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The streetlights blurred past as I replayed those words over and over. "She's used to eating what life leaves behind." The laughter still echoed in my ears. Not polite chuckles, but real, genuine laughter. My own family thought humiliating me was entertainment. I pulled into my driveway just after midnight. The house stood dark and silent, exactly as I'd left it 5 hours earlier, when I'd driven to the venue full of hope. I'd actually believed tonight would be different. That maybe, finally, Derek would acknowledge everything I'd sacrificed for him. Instead, I got cold leftovers and public mockery. My mother of the groom dress suddenly felt too tight. I couldn't breathe in it anymore. I went straight to my bedroom and changed into my old cotton nightgown, the one I'd owned for 15 years, because I never spent money on myself. There was always something Derek needed instead. I walked through my house, really seeing it for the first time in years. Every room held memories of choices I'd made for my son. The empty space in the living room where my mother's antique piano used to sit. I'd sold it to help with Derek's college textbooks. The bare walls where my father's original artwork had hung. Sold to cover Derek's security deposit when he got his first apartment. In the hallway, photographs chronicled Derek's life. Derek at 6, gap-toothed and grinning, on our camping trip to Yellowstone. That was the summer I worked 3 jobs so I could take him somewhere special after the divorce. Derek at 13 in his private school uniform. I'd worked the overnight shift at the hospital, and then waitress during the day so I could afford that tuition. Derek at 18, graduating from prep school as valedictorian. I'd been so proud. Derek at 22, standing in front of his failed business venture, that overpriced coffee shop that bled money for 8 months before closing. I'd co-signed the loan for $35,000. When the business folded and Derek couldn't pay, I'd quietly taken over the payments. It took me 4 years to pay off that loan. 4 years of living on rice and beans, of saying no to every invitation that cost money, of watching my friends take vacations while I worked extra hours. I'd done it all gladly. Or so I'd told myself. Because that's what mothers do, right? We sacrifice. We give. We expect nothing in return except maybe a little respect, a little appreciation, a little basic human decency. Tonight proved I didn't even deserve that. I found myself in my home office, the one room in the house that was truly mine. My laptop sat on the desk, closed and waiting. I opened it and stared at the screen as it powered on. The clock in the corner read 12:43 in the morning. I pulled up a folder labeled Greystone Restaurant Investment. My hands were shaking as I clicked through the files. Legal documents, financial statements, partnership agreements. 3 years of careful record-keeping. 3 years ago, Derek had come to me with a dream. He wanted to open an upscale farm-to-table restaurant. He'd found the perfect location, had a solid business plan, and a vision for something special, but he couldn't get financing. His credit was damaged from the coffee shop failure. Banks wouldn't touch him. I'd just received a small inheritance from my aunt, $250,000. I'd planned to use it for my retirement, maybe finally take that trip to Ireland I'd dreamed about since I was a girl. But Derek's face when he talked about the restaurant reminded me of that 6-year-old boy at Yellowstone, so full of hope and excitement. So I'd invested the money, all of it. But I'd done it anonymously, through a legal entity my lawyer had set up. I didn't want Derek to feel burdened by obligation to me. I wanted him to succeed on his own merit, to build something he could be proud of without feeling like he owed his success to his mother. The restaurant became exactly what he'd envisioned. Within a year, it was written up in regional food magazines. Within 2 years, it was the place to eat in our town. Celebrities visited when they passed through. Derek was featured in articles as a young entrepreneur, a self-made success story. He never knew his mother was the reason he could open those doors. I'd been proud of him. Even when he forgot my birthday last year. Even when he canceled our monthly dinners 3 times in a row. Even when he barely called anymore. I told myself he was busy, building his dream. That was enough for me. But tonight showed me the truth. My son didn't just take me for granted. He actively disrespected me. And worse, he'd married someone who encouraged that disrespect. I opened a new email and began typing. The words came easily, clearer than anything I'd written in years. To Derek Hartwell and Paul Richardson, business manager, Greystone Restaurant. From Lee Hartwell, silent investor. Subject: Notice of investment withdrawal. I wrote calmly, professionally. I stated that I was the anonymous investor who had provided the initial capital of $250,000 3 years ago. I attached legal documentation proving my investment and the partnership terms that allowed withdrawal with 30 days' notice. I explained, in measured language, that I could no longer support a business where I was not valued or respected. I did not elaborate. I did not need to. The facts spoke for themselves. I reviewed the email 3 times, making sure every word was correct, every attachment in place. Then I looked at the clock. 3:47 in the morning. I hit send. The whoosh sound as the email left my outbox felt like release, like exhaling after holding my breath for 32 years. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark office. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel sad. I felt something I hadn't felt in decades. I felt powerful. I didn't sleep that night. I made coffee as the sun rose and watched the morning light fill my kitchen. My phone started ringing at 7:15. Derek's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again immediately. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. The voicemails started confused. Mom, I just got a really weird email. Can you call me? Then concerned. Mom, seriously, I need to talk to you about this investment thing. Call me back. Then panicked. Mom, please, this is important. I don't understand what's happening. Then angry. Mom, you need to call me right now. This isn't funny. I deleted each one without listening to the end. At 8:30, a text came through. I almost didn't read it, but something made me look. Derek. Mom, I signed the expansion loan yesterday morning before the wedding. $400,000. The bank approved it because of the anonymous investor backing. Without that capital showing on the books, they'll call the entire loan. I have 30 days before they foreclose. You're going to cost me everything. I read the text twice. 3 times. The timing was almost poetic. He'd signed a massive loan the morning of his wedding, banking on an investor he didn't even know was his mother. And now, because he'd humiliated that investor at his reception, he was going to lose everything. I should have felt guilty. A good mother would feel guilty. I felt nothing but that strange cold power. I set the phone face down on the counter and poured myself another cup of coffee. The phone kept ringing. I turned it off and went to make breakfast. At 10 o'clock, someone started pounding on my front door. Not knocking, pounding. The kind of desperate hammering that makes the whole frame shake. I looked through the peephole and saw my son. He still wore his tuxedo pants from the wedding, now wrinkled and stained. His white dress shirt was untucked, missing buttons. His hair stood up in wild angles. His eyes were red and swollen. I considered not opening the door. I could simply stand here and watch him pound until he gave up. The thought was tempting. But Derek would make a scene. He'd wake the neighbors, draw attention. Better to face this now. I unlocked the door but didn't invite him in. I stood in the doorway, my body blocking entry, and looked at my son with new eyes. Mom, his voice cracked. We need to talk. Do we? Please. Can I come in? No. The words surprised us both. I'd never said no to Derek in his entire life. The shock on his face would have been funny if this weren't so serious. Mom, look. He ran his hands through his hair, making it even messier. I'm sorry about last night, okay? It was just a joke. Everyone was drinking. You know how weddings are. People get loose. Say things they don't mean. You meant it. No, I didn't. Come on. It was just a stupid comment. You announced to a room full of people that I'm used to eating what life leaves behind. You did it loudly, proudly. And when they laughed, you smiled. Derek shifted his weight, looking away. I'd had champagne. I wasn't thinking clearly. You were thinking very clearly. You were showing off for your new wife, proving to her that you could put me in my place. That's not fair. Fair? The word tasted bitter. You want to talk about fair? Let's talk about fair, Derek. Is it fair that I worked 3 jobs to put you through private school while wearing the same 5 outfits for 4 years? Is it fair that I sold my mother's jewelry to pay your college tuition? Is it fair that I spent 4 years paying off your failed business loan while you told people you were an entrepreneur? His face flushed red. I never asked you to do any of that. You didn't have to ask. I'm your mother. I did it because I loved you. But apparently, love to you means cold leftovers and public humiliation. You're being oversensitive. It was one comment. One comment. I laughed. A harsh sound I barely recognized. Derek, you've been treating me like an inconvenience for years. Canceled dinners. Forgotten birthdays. Phone calls that last 30 seconds before you say you have to go. Last night wasn't one comment. It was the final comment in a very long conversation you've been having about my worth. So your solution is to destroy my business? His voice rose, the anger finally breaking through the fake apology. To bankrupt me? That's insane, Mom. That's vindictive and cruel. I'm withdrawing my investment. That's my legal right. Legal right? He spat the words. Who cares about legal rights? I'm your son. You're supposed to support me no matter what. That's what family does. Support goes both ways, Derek. Or it should. Oh my God. He pressed his palms against his eyes. This is really happening. You're really going to do this. The withdrawal stands. You have 30 days to figure it out. Figure it out? His hands dropped, and I saw tears streaming down his face. But they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of rage. How? How am I supposed to figure out losing $400,000 in 30 days? The bank will foreclose. I'll lose the restaurant. I'll lose everything I've built. Everything you built with my money. The words hung between us like a blade. Before Derek could respond, a car screeched into my driveway. We both turned. A red sedan stopped at an angle, one wheel on the grass. The driver's door flew open and Brittany emerged, still wearing yoga pants and a wrinkled t-shirt, her hair in a messy ponytail. She stormed across the lawn, her face twisted with fury. You! She pointed at me like she was casting a curse. You selfish, bitter woman. Brittany, don't! Derek reached for her arm, but she shook him off. No. Someone needs to say it. She climbed the 2 steps to my porch, getting right in my face. I could smell coffee on her breath. You've always been jealous of me. You never wanted Derek to get married because you wanted to keep him all to yourself. This whole thing is because you can't stand that Derek chose me. I stepped back, creating space. That's not true, isn't it? She turned to Derek, then back to me. From the day we met, you've undermined me. The little comments about my clothes, my job, my family. The way you'd reminisce about Derek's childhood like I wasn't even in the room. You've been trying to drive us apart from the beginning. I've been nothing but polite to you. Polite? Brittany laughed. A sharp, theatrical sound. You've been passive-aggressive and controlling. And now this. Pulling your money the day after our wedding. That's not about respect or leftovers or whatever excuse you're using. This is about control. You'd rather see Derek homeless than happy with me. I noticed movement in my peripheral vision. Mrs. Patterson from next door had come out to water her flowers. Mrs. Hughes across the street was checking her mailbox, though the mail didn't come for another 3 hours. Old Mr. Chen from 2 houses down was suddenly very interested in trimming his hedge. They were all watching. Listening. Brittany noticed too. Her voice got louder, more theatrical. She was performing now. This is what a toxic mother looks like. She gestured at me, addressing our growing audience. She's been emotionally abusing Derek his whole life, making him feel guilty, making him feel like he owes her. And now that he's finally free, now that he's married and happy, she's trying to destroy him financially because she can't control him anymore. That's not what this is about. I tried to keep my voice calm, but I could hear it shaking. Then what is it about, Lee? Tell everyone. Tell them why you destroy your own son's business over a joke at a wedding. Tell them what kind of person does that. I looked at the neighbors. Mrs. Patterson had stopped pretending to water and was openly staring. Mrs. Hughes had her phone out. Was she recording this? I don't owe anyone an explanation. My voice sounded weak even to my own ears. Because you don't have one, Brittany smiled, victorious. Everyone will know what kind of person you really are, Lee. Everyone. She grabbed Derek's hand. Come on. We're not going to beg someone who doesn't care about her own son. They walked to their car. Brittany made sure to hold Derek close, playing the supportive wife protecting her husband from his terrible mother. As they drove away, she looked back at me through the window. For just a second, her expression changed. The fury dropped, replaced by something cold and calculating. Then the car turned the corner, and they were gone. I stood on my porch, aware of every eye on me. Mrs. Patterson finally spoke, her voice carrying across the quiet morning. Lee, is everything all right? The question was innocent enough, but I heard the judgment underneath, the curiosity, the hunger for gossip. Everything's fine. I went back inside and closed the door. Through the window, I watched Mrs. Patterson hurry across the street to Mrs. Hughes, their heads bent together, mouths moving rapidly. Mrs. Hughes gestured to her phone. By noon, everyone in the neighborhood would know that Lee Hartwell had tried to destroy her own son's business. They'd know because Brittany had made sure they'd know. This confrontation, this public scene, it wasn't spontaneous. It was planned. I leaned against the door and closed my eyes. This was just beginning. 3 days passed in suffocating silence. I stayed in my house, ordering groceries for delivery, ignoring the phone calls and messages that accumulated on my voicemail. I wasn't hiding. I was thinking, processing, understanding that my life had fundamentally changed in the span of one wedding reception. On Thursday afternoon, my phone rang with a number I actually recognized. Claire, my daughter, Derek's younger sister. My heart lifted slightly. Claire had always been different from Derek. More thoughtful, more aware. She'd understand. She'd see through Brittany's manipulation. I answered on the third ring. Claire, honey, I'm so glad you called. Mom. Her voice was flat. Cold. We need to talk about what you're doing to Derek. The hope in my chest turned to ice. Claire, let me explain. Brittany told me everything. About how you've been undermining their marriage from the start. About the cruel things you've said to her when Derek wasn't around. What? I've never said anything cruel to Brittany. Claire, you know me. You know I wouldn't do that. Do I? There was a pause. Derek showed me the investment documents, Mom. You pulled your funding the day after his wedding. That's not just cruel. That's calculated. That's vindictive. Did he tell you what happened at the wedding? You mean the joke? Mom, seriously? You're trying to bankrupt your own son over a joke? It wasn't just a joke, Claire. He humiliated me in front of everyone. Served me cold food last, then mocked me for it. So he made one comment after drinking too much champagne, and you respond by destroying his business? Do you hear yourself? That's not proportional. That's not sane. Sane. The word hit like a slap. Claire, there's more to this than you know. Then explain it to me. Because right now, what I know is that Brittany called me crying. She told me about years of passive-aggressive comments. About how you'd criticize her clothes, her job, her family. About how you'd exclude her from conversations, treat her like she wasn't good enough for Derek. She gave me examples, Mom. Specific things you said. What things? Tell me what she said, I said. Does it matter? The point is, you've been awful to her, and now you're punishing Derek for marrying her. And honestly, Claire's voice wavered. When I think back on some things, what Brittany said makes sense. What things? Like how you always had to be the center of attention. How you'd bring up your sacrifices whenever Derek tried to make his own decisions. How you'd guilt him into doing what you wanted. I always thought it was just typical mom stuff, but Brittany helped me see it differently. My younger daughter, the one I'd thought would stand by me, had been turned against me by a woman she'd known less than a year. Claire, please, just listen to me for 5 minutes. I've listened, Mom, and I don't like what I'm hearing. Look, there's a family gathering at Aunt Carol's house this Sunday, Cousin Jennifer's birthday. We all think you should come. We all? The family. We want to talk about this. Together. As a family. The way she said it made my stomach turn. This wasn't an invitation. It was a summons. A trial. I don't think that's a good idea. Mom, if you don't come, it's just going to prove everything Brittany said about you. That you can't handle being challenged. That you run away when people try to hold you accountable. Accountable? For what? For withdrawing my own money? For refusing to accept disrespect? But I heard the trap in Claire's words. If I didn't go, I was running away. If I did go, I'd be walking into an ambush. What time on Sunday? 2:00. And Mom? Please think about what you're doing. Really think about it. Because you're about to lose your whole family over your pride. She hung up before I could respond. I sat with the phone in my hand for a long time. My whole family. As if they were mine to lose, not the other way around. Sunday arrived too quickly. I spent Saturday night trying to decide what to wear, which was ridiculous. This wasn't a fashion show. But I knew appearances mattered. I needed to look put together, rational, stable, not like the unhinged woman Brittany was painting me to be. I chose a simple navy dress, pearl earrings, low heels. I wrapped Jennifer's birthday gift carefully, a cookbook she'd mentioned wanting. I'd special ordered it 2 months ago. The drive to Aunt Carol's house took 20 minutes. I'd made this drive 1,000 times over the years. Family dinners, holiday celebrations, birthday parties. The house had always felt like a safe place, full of laughter and acceptance. Today, it felt like driving toward an execution. I parked on the street and walked up the familiar driveway. Through the front window, I could see people already gathered. A lot of people. I rang the doorbell. Aunt Carol answered, her smile tight and false. "Lee, come in." No hug, no warmth, just those 2 words, and a gesture toward the living room. The conversation stopped the moment I entered. Every face turned toward me. Derek and Brittany sat on the couch, positioned like victims in a courtroom. Claire stood near the fireplace, arms crossed. Aunt Carol moved to stand beside her husband, Uncle Raymond. My cousins Jennifer and Beth sat in chairs by the window. Everyone was here. Everyone was already aligned. "Lee, thank you for coming." Aunt Carol's voice had that artificial sweetness people use when they're about to say something terrible. "Why don't you sit down? We need to talk." I remained standing. "This feels like an ambush." "It's not an ambush," Uncle Raymond spoke up. "It's an intervention. We're concerned about you." Intervention. The word hung in the air like poison. "I don't need an intervention." "Mom, please." Derek's voice was soft, wounded. He was playing the hurt son perfectly. "Just sit down. Listen to what everyone has to say." I sat on the edge of a chair, my purse in my lap, gift still in hand. I felt like a defendant waiting for sentencing. Brittany spoke first, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "I want everyone to know. I didn't want to do this. I hate airing family problems. But Derek is suffering, and I can't watch it anymore." She turned to the room, her voice thick with false emotion. From the moment Derek and I started dating, Lee made it clear I wasn't welcome. Little comments about how I dressed, how I talked, where I came from. She'd reminisce about Derek's old girlfriends in front of me. She'd plan mother-son outings and tell me I wasn't invited because they needed their alone time. "That's not true." I looked at Derek. "Tell them that's not true." Derek looked away. "Mom, you did say those things. Maybe you didn't mean them the way they sounded, but you said them." "What things?" "Give me one specific example." Brittany jumped in. "Last Thanksgiving. You said my green bean casserole was interesting, with that tone. Like interesting was code for disgusting. Your casserole was interesting. It had cranberries in it. I'd never seen that before. I was being polite." "See?" Brittany looked at the family. "Even now, she can't admit when she's wrong. She twists everything." Claire stepped forward. "Mom, Brittany showed me text messages, things you sent Derek about her, about how fast they were moving, how you barely knew her, how maybe he should slow down. I did say that, because they got engaged after 4 months. I thought my son might want to take his time." "You were trying to break us up," Brittany said. I was expressing normal parental concern. Aunt Carol cleared her throat. "Lee, honey, we're all worried about you. This kind of behavior, it's not normal." "What behavior? Withdrawing my own money? Punishing your son for getting married," Uncle Raymond said, "using money as a weapon. That's emotional abuse, Lee." "Emotional abuse." The words hit like stones. I didn't punish him for getting married. I withdrew my investment after he publicly humiliated me at his wedding reception. One joke, Derek said. One stupid joke, and you're willing to destroy everything I've built. Everything I built. The words came out harder than I intended. With my money, my investment, my retirement fund that I gave you anonymously so you could succeed. And there it is, Brittany said softly. She can't do anything without keeping score. Every sacrifice gets thrown back in Derek's face. That's not love, that's manipulation. I looked around the room. Every face showed the same expression. Pity mixed with judgment. They'd already decided. This intervention was just theater. Claire, you know me. I turned to my daughter, desperate. You know I'm not manipulative. You know I love Derek. Claire's eyes filled with tears. I thought I knew you, Mom. But the things Brittany's told me, they make me see our whole childhood differently. How you'd guilt trip us when we wanted to spend time with friends instead of you. How you'd get quiet and cold when we didn't do what you wanted. How you'd remind us of everything you sacrificed, like we owed you our whole lives. I never did that. You did, Mom. You just don't see it. Aunt Carol moved closer. Lee, honey, we're worried about you. This kind of behavior, it suggests you might need help. Have you considered talking to someone? A therapist, maybe? A therapist. They thought I was crazy. There's nothing wrong with my mental health. Then why are you doing this? Uncle Raymond asked. Help us understand. Because from where we're sitting, it looks like you're having some kind of breakdown. I'm not having a breakdown. I'm setting boundaries. By destroying your son's livelihood? Brittany wiped her eyes. By punishing him for falling in love? I'm not punishing anyone. I'm withdrawing support from someone who doesn't respect me. Listen to yourself, Aunt Carol said gently. Doesn't that sound a little extreme? I stood up, gift still in my hand. You've all made up your minds. This isn't a conversation. It's a verdict. Mom, wait. Derek stood too. We just want you to make this right. Return the investment. Apologize to Brittany. We can move past this. Apologize? For what? For everything, Brittany said. For 2 years of passive-aggressive cruelty. For trying to break up our relationship. For sabotaging our wedding gift fund. For pulling your investment as revenge. I stared at her. I never sabotaged any gift fund. What are you talking about? She told family members not to give us money, Brittany said to the room. She wanted us to struggle. That's a lie. Is it? Brittany's eyes met mine, and for just a second, I saw it again. That cold calculation. She was enjoying this. I set Jennifer's gift on the side table. I'm leaving. Lay, if you walk out that door, you're choosing to cut yourself off from this family. Aunt Carol's voice was hard now. Is that really what you want? I'm not the one doing the cutting. I walked to the door. Behind me, I heard Brittany's voice, pitched perfectly for the audience. See? She's impossible. This is what Derek and I have been dealing with. I got to my car and sat behind the wheel, hands shaking too hard to put the key in the ignition. Through the living room window, I could see them all gathered together, already talking about me, already reinforcing their shared narrative of the crazy, controlling mother who couldn't accept her son's happiness. I'd lost them. All of them. In less than a week, I'd gone from having a family to being completely alone. I started the car and drove home. 2 weeks passed like a slow drowning. I moved through my days in a fog of isolation. Friends from my book club stopped returning my calls. At church on Sunday, women I'd known for 20 years gave me thin smiles and found reasons to hurry away when I tried to talk to them. The story had spread beyond family. I could feel it in every interaction, every averted gaze, every conversation that stopped when I entered a room. On a Tuesday afternoon, I ran into Nancy Griggs at the pharmacy. Nancy and I had been friends for 15 years. Our kids went to school together. We'd volunteered at the same charity fundraisers. She'd been to my house 100 times. Nancy! I smiled with genuine relief. Finally, a friendly face. She looked up from the vitamin shelf, and I watched her expression change. Warmth to discomfort to something like fear. Oh, Lay. Hi. I haven't seen you in weeks. How's everything? Fine. Good. Really busy, actually. She grabbed a random bottle of vitamins without looking at it. I should go. Lots to do. She practically ran to the checkout counter. I stood alone in the vitamin aisle, holding the prescription I'd come to fill, and understood. Nancy had heard the story. Whatever version was circulating, it was bad enough that a 15-year friendship meant nothing. That evening, I was scrolling through my phone when a notification appeared. Someone had tagged me in a post. My stomach dropped before I even clicked it. The post was a link to a local news article. The headline made my blood run cold. Local restaurant faces financial crisis after family dispute. I clicked the link with shaking hands. The article opened with a photo of Derek standing in front of Greystone Restaurant, looking exhausted and defeated. The caption read, "Derek Hartwell faces closure of his successful restaurant due to family conflict." I forced myself to read the article. Derek Hartwell, 32, owner of the popular Greystone Restaurant, is fighting to save his business after a sudden family dispute left him financially devastated. Hartwell, who opened the farm-to-table restaurant 3 years ago, recently secured a $400,000 expansion loan to open a second location. The loan was approved based on backing from a silent investor who had funded the original restaurant. But the day after Hartwell's wedding, that investor, his mother Lee Hartwell, 64, abruptly withdrew all financial support. "Everything was fine until I got married," Derek told this reporter. "My mother never approved of my wife. When I wouldn't choose between them, she decided to destroy my business." According to family sources who spoke on condition of anonymity, the elder Hartwell has a history of using money to control her son. "She's always held her financial support over his head," one family member said. "The moment he chose his wife over his mother, she punished him." The withdrawal of the investment has triggered a clause in the expansion loan. Without the backing capital, the bank is calling the entire loan. Hartwell has 30 days to repay $400,000 or face foreclosure on both his existing restaurant and the planned second location. "I've worked so hard for this," Hartwell said, emotion evident in his voice. "To have it all taken away because my mother can't accept that I'm married, it's devastating." Attempts to reach Lee Hartwell for comment were unsuccessful. The restaurant, which employs 23 people, is beloved in the community. If it closes, those jobs will be lost. This is a developing story. I read it 3 times. Each time the words got worse. The lies got bigger. The picture they painted of me got darker. I scrolled to the comments section. I shouldn't have. I knew I shouldn't have, but I couldn't stop myself. What kind of mother destroys her own son's business? This is financial abuse. She should be ashamed. Poor guy. He finally finds happiness, and his mother punishes him for it. Narcissistic parents are the worst. They'd rather see their kids suffer than lose control. I hope she's happy. She just cost 23 people their jobs. There were hundreds of comments. Hundreds of strangers who knew nothing about me, nothing about what really happened, all united in their hatred of the terrible mother who would hurt her own son. The article had been shared 647 times. My phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. I answered without thinking. "Is this Lee Hartwell?" "Yes." "This is Sandra Chen from Riverside Foundation. I'm calling about your consulting contract with us." My consulting business. I'd built it over 20 years, helping nonprofits with grant writing and fundraising strategies. It wasn't lucrative, but it paid my bills and let me help organizations I believed in. "Yes, Sandra. How can I help you?" "Ms. Hartwell, we've decided to terminate our contract, effective immediately." The words didn't make sense at first. "I'm sorry, what?" "We're going in a different direction. We'll send the final payment for work completed, but we won't be needing your services anymore." "Can I ask why? Did I do something wrong?" A pause. "We've seen the news article about your family situation. Riverside Foundation prides itself on family-centered values. We can't be associated with someone whose actions contradict those values." "Sandra, that article doesn't tell the whole story." "I'm sure it doesn't, but perception matters in nonprofit work. I'm sorry, but the decision is final." She hung up. I sat staring at my phone, one client gone. But I had 5 other active contracts. Surely the others wouldn't all bail because of one biased article. By Friday, 4 more clients had called with various excuses, going in a different direction, budget cuts. restructuring, but I heard the truth underneath. They'd all seen the article. They'd all decided they couldn't work with me. Only one client remained, the women's shelter I'd worked with for 8 years. I was helping them with a grant application worth $80,000. If they didn't get that money, they'd have to cut services. I couldn't abandon them. But my monthly income had just dropped from $4,000 to $500. My mortgage alone was $1,800. On Saturday, I forced myself to go to the grocery store. I needed food. I couldn't hide forever. I should have ordered delivery. I was in the produce section, trying to decide between regular and organic apples, when I felt someone approach. I looked up and saw a woman I vaguely recognized. Someone from church, maybe, or a parent from Derek's old school. "You should be ashamed of yourself." Her voice was loud enough that other shoppers turned to look. "Excuse me, I read about what you did to your son. What kind of mother are you? You don't know the whole story." "I know enough. That poor boy worked so hard, and you destroyed him because you're jealous of his wife. You're a terrible person." People were staring now. Phones were coming out. Someone was recording. "Please leave me alone. You should leave your son alone. Let him live his life without your toxicity." A store manager appeared. "Ma'am, is there a problem?" The woman pointed at me. "She's the one from the news. The mother who's destroying her son's business." The manager looked at me, recognition dawning. "Ma'am, perhaps you should finish your shopping." I abandoned my cart and walked out. Behind me, I heard the woman's voice. "Did you see her face? No remorse at all, just like the article said." I made it to my car before the tears came. That evening, someone left a note on my windshield. The paper was folded once, no envelope. I opened it with shaking hands. In neat block letters it said, "Bad Mother." I crumpled the note and threw it in the trash, but the words stayed with me. On Monday morning, a certified letter arrived. Official-looking, thick envelope, return address from a law firm downtown. I opened it at my kitchen table. Derek Hartwell v. Lee Hartwell. Civil complaint for breach of oral contract, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and tortious interference with business relations. The lawsuit sought compensatory damages of $400,000 and punitive damages of $100,000, plus attorney fees and court costs. $500,000, more money than I had, more money than I could possibly pay. I read through the complaint with growing horror. It was full of lies. Derek claimed we'd had an oral agreement that my investment was permanent, that I'd promised to support the business indefinitely, that I'd withdrawn the money specifically to cause him harm. It painted me as vengeful, manipulative, mentally unstable. It included quotes from family members attesting to my controlling behavior and emotional abuse. The complaint was 10 pages of carefully constructed lies designed to destroy what was left of my reputation and take everything I had. I sat at my kitchen table, lawsuit in hand, and realized I'd lost. My family was gone. My friends were gone. My business was gone. My reputation was destroyed. And now my financial security was about to be taken too. Derek had won, or rather, Brittany had won, because I was starting to understand that this had been her plan all along. I just couldn't prove it yet. Martin Shepard's law office smelled like old books and coffee. I sat across from him at a desk covered in legal documents, trying to understand how my life had reached this point. Martin was 68, a friend of my late father's, one of the few people in town who still answered my calls. He reviewed Derek's lawsuit with a practiced eye, occasionally making notes in the margins. Finally, he set it down and looked at me over his reading glasses. "The good news is that the breach of contract claim is nonsense. You have written documentation proving the investment terms allowed withdrawal. No oral agreement supersedes that. And the bad news? The emotional distress and business interference claims are messier. They're subjective. They rely on testimony about your intent and actions. And Derek has lined up family members willing to testify that you've been emotionally abusive and controlling. They're lying. I believe you. But juries believe compelling stories, and Derek's lawyer is going to tell a very compelling story about a controlling mother who couldn't handle her son's marriage." I felt sick. So he might win? Even if he doesn't win on all counts, this will cost you. Legal fees alone could run $30,000 to $50,000 to defend properly. and that's if we can get some charges dismissed before trial. I don't have $30,000. I know. Martin's expression was sympathetic, which puts you in an impossible position. You can settle and give them something, or you can fight and possibly lose everything either way. I went home and did something I'd been avoiding. I opened my financial records and faced the truth. My savings account had $23,000. My checking account had $4,000. I had a small investment account worth $18,000. My house had about $80,000 in equity, but I'd need to sell it to access that money. Without my consulting income, I had maybe 4 months before I couldn't pay my bills. I couldn't afford to fight this lawsuit, but I couldn't afford to settle either. I was trapped. That night, unable to sleep, I did what I'd done 1,000 times over the past 3 years. I logged into the secure portal where I received financial reports from Greystone Restaurant. As the silent investor, I got monthly statements, profit and loss reports, expense accounts. I'd reviewed them all religiously, proud of Derek's success, even if he didn't know I was watching. I pulled up the last year of expense reports, not sure what I was looking for. Maybe just evidence of the success Derek was about to lose. Maybe punishment for myself, seeing what my money had built. Then I noticed something odd. An entry from 8 months ago. Continental Supplies, $8,500. I didn't recognize the vendor name. That wasn't unusual. The restaurant worked with dozens of suppliers, but something about it nagged at me. I opened earlier months. There it was again. Continental Supplies, $6,300. And again. And again. Regular payments, varying amounts, always between $5,000 and $12,000. I cross-referenced these payments with inventory reports and bank deposits. If Continental Supplies was a real vendor, there should be corresponding inventory increases or deliveries recorded. There were none. My heart started beating faster. I opened a spreadsheet and began tracking every payment to Continental Supplies over the past 2 years. By 3 a.m, I'd found 37 payments totaling over $100,000. None matched any inventory increase or recorded delivery. I expanded my search. Were there other suspicious vendors? I found Premium Services, Cascade Solutions, Northwest Hospitality Group, all receiving regular payments, none corresponding to any actual goods or services I could verify. I added them up. Over 3 years, approximately $130,000 had been paid to vendors that didn't seem to exist. I called Martin Shepard at 7 a.m. Martin, I think there's embezzlement happening at the restaurant. What? Fake vendors. Payments going out regularly to companies that don't provide anything. Over $100,000. Lee, that's a serious accusation. I have the records. Monthly financial statements. I can prove it. There was a pause. If you're right, this changes everything. But we need an expert to analyze it properly. A forensic accountant. How much does that cost? Around $10,000 for a thorough examination. I closed my eyes. $10,000 I didn't have. But if I was right, it might be the only way to save myself. Do it. Susan Winters arrived at my house 3 days later with a laptop and a serious expression. She was in her mid-40s, dressed in a crisp suit, all business. I'd given her access to every financial document I had. She'd spent 4 days analyzing them. Now she sat across from me at my dining room table and delivered her findings. Someone has been systematically embezzling from Greystone Restaurant for approximately 18 months. The total amount is closer to $130,000. Hearing it confirmed sent a chill through me. Susan continued, "The fake vendor accounts are sophisticated. They're registered businesses with legitimate-looking websites and P.O. boxes, but they're shells. The money goes in and immediately gets transferred to other accounts. I've traced some of it, but the trail gets murky once it leaves the country. Who's doing it? That's where it gets interesting." Susan pulled up a spreadsheet on her laptop. Whoever is doing this has been very careful, but they've also been setting up the paper trail to implicate you. What do you mean? Look at the timing. She turned the laptop toward me. See these dates? The embezzled funds coincide exactly with when your investment payments came into the business account. On paper, it looks like you were investing money, and then someone with access to your investor account was siphoning it back out. My mouth went dry. But I didn't have access to the operational accounts. I was a silent investor. My money went into an escrow account that funded the business, but I couldn't touch it after that. The records have been altered to show otherwise. And look at this. She pulled up another document. The fake vendors are all registered to P.O. boxes in your zip code. Someone is framing me. Yes, and they've been doing it carefully over time. If this goes to court and they audit the business, you'd be the prime suspect. You had access through your investor account. You had motive if you wanted money back. And the timing aligns perfectly with your investments. I felt like I was falling. This was planned. From the beginning, it looks that way. Susan pulled up another file. There's more. I found evidence of credit card fraud using the restaurant's merchant processing system. What kind of fraud? Someone's been using customer credit card information to make fraudulent purchases. Small amounts, carefully distributed to avoid detection. But over 18 months, it adds up to approximately $40,000. So this isn't just embezzlement. No, this is organized fraud, multiple schemes running simultaneously. And if it's discovered by authorities, the restaurant won't just fail. There could be criminal charges. The merchant processing company could sue. Customers whose cards were compromised could file lawsuits. This is exposure in the millions. My mind raced. Who has access to do all this? Susan pulled up an organizational chart. Based on the financial structure and access levels, only 3 people could execute all these schemes. They'd need access to both the investor escrow account and the merchant processing system. She pointed at 3 names on the chart. Derek Hartwell, as owner, Paul Richardson, the restaurant manager, and Brittany Hartwell, who was made CFO 6 months ago. Brittany. The timing is significant. The credit card fraud started almost immediately after she was given access. The embezzlement escalated dramatically around the same time. I thought about Brittany's performance at Aunt Carol's house, her careful manipulation of the family, her theatrical confrontation at my house, perfectly timed for maximum audience. She's done this before. Susan raised her eyebrows. You have evidence of that? Not yet, but I'm going to find it. I hired Harold Banks, a private investigator, the next day. It cost me another $5,000 I couldn't afford, but I was all in now. If I was going to lose everything anyway, I might as well know the truth. Harold called me 3 days later. Miss Hartwell, I think you should come to my office. You're going to want to sit down for this. Harold's office was above a bail bonds shop in the old part of downtown. The building smelled like cigarettes and desperation, but Harold had the information I needed. He slid a thick folder across his desk. Her name isn't really Brittany Walsh. I opened the folder. Inside were documents, photographs, newspaper clippings. 6 years ago, she was Brooke Wilkinson in Phoenix, Arizona. Before that, Bridget Warner in Denver, Colorado. Probably other names before that, but those are the ones I could verify. The photographs showed Brittany with different hair colors and styles, but it was unmistakably her. Same eyes, same smile. In Phoenix, she married a man named Trevor Chen. He owned a small chain of dry cleaning businesses. Successful guy, inherited some money from his family. Within a year of marriage, the businesses started having financial trouble. Accounting irregularities, missing money. By the time Trevor realized what was happening, she disappeared with approximately $200,000. I stared at the documents. Was she arrested? No. Trevor was too humiliated to press charges. He told police he must have mismanaged the money himself. But I talked to his lawyer. Off the record, they're certain she embezzled it. They just couldn't prove it in time. And Denver? Similar pattern. She was Bridget Warner. Married a guy named Marcus Payne who owned a successful landscaping company. Married quick, gained access to finances. Business mysteriously failed within 2 years. By the time Marcus figured it out, Bridget had vanished. He was left bankrupt and facing fraud charges from the IRS because she'd been filing fake tax returns in his company's name. How does she get away with it? She's smart. She researches her targets carefully. Finds successful men, usually from families with money. She gets close, marries fast, gains financial access, then she creates chaos. She embezzles in ways that look like business mismanagement or accounting errors. She sets up fall guys. By the time anyone realizes it's fraud, she's gone with a new identity. I thought about how quickly Derek and Brittany had gotten engaged. 4 months. How she'd pushed for a quick wedding. How she'd immediately worked to isolate Derek from family, specifically from me. She knew about my investment. I'd bet on it. She probably researched your whole family before she approached Derek. Found out about your money, your strained relationship with Derek, everything. You were the perfect scapegoat, the wealthy mother who might pull funding. She just had to drive the wedge deeper. The wedding humiliation was probably calculated to provoke exactly the response you gave. She needed you to withdraw your investment. That's what triggers the loan default. That's what creates the crisis that lets her cash out and disappear. I looked at the evidence spread across Harold's desk. This proves she's a con artist. This proves she's done this before. It suggests a pattern, but it doesn't prove she's embezzling from Derek's restaurant. We'd need the FBI involved for that. Financial crimes across state lines. Then we call the FBI. Are you sure? Once you do this, there's no going back. Derek is going to be devastated when he learns the truth about his wife. I thought about my son, about the lawsuit he'd filed against me, about the lies he'd told to reporters, about how completely Brittany had turned him against me. He's already devastated. He just doesn't know it yet. Make the call. Harold contacted the FBI. To my surprise, they were very interested. Special Agent Marcus Reed arrived at my house the next morning with another agent and a laptop full of questions. We've been tracking a pattern of financial fraud across western states for 3 years, Agent Reed explained. Similar methods, similar targets. We suspected someone was operating, but we couldn't identify them. Your information gives us what we need. Can you stop her before she runs? If we move fast. But we'll need your cooperation. Anything. You need to contact Derek. Arrange a meeting. Tell him you want to make peace, that you have information about the restaurant's financial troubles. We need you to get him alone so we can explain the situation and get his cooperation. He won't believe me. He will when we show him the evidence. But we need to move before Brittany realizes we're onto her. If she suspects anything, she'll disappear like she has before. When? Tomorrow. Can you do tomorrow? I nodded. I'll call him. That evening, I sat with my phone, staring at Derek's number. We hadn't spoken since the confrontation at my house 3 weeks ago. He'd filed a lawsuit against me. He told a reporter I was destroying his life. He thought I was the villain in his story. And now I had to call him and ask for a meeting. I dialed before I could talk myself out of it. He answered on the 4th ring. What do you want, Mom? The coldness in his voice hurt more than I expected. Derek, I need to talk to you. In person. It's about the restaurant. If you're calling to gloat about the lawsuit, you can save it. My lawyer says we have a strong case. I'm not calling to gloat. I've had an accountant review the restaurant's financial records. There's something wrong, Derek. Something serious. You need to see it. More manipulation? More trying to control my life? Please. Just meet me. 1 hour. I'll show you everything, and then you can decide what to do. A long pause. I could hear background noise. Traffic, maybe. He wasn't at home. Fine. Tomorrow. 2 p.m. at the restaurant. But if this is another one of your games, Mom, I swear I'll have my lawyer add harassment to the lawsuit. It's not a game. I promise. He hung up without saying goodbye. Agent Reed called me that night. He agreed to meet? Yes. Tomorrow at 2. Good. We'll have agents nearby. But there's a complication. If Derek tells Brittany about the meeting, she might run before we can make an arrest. We need her to feel safe until we're ready to move. Derek tells her everything. She's made sure of that. Then we need to move the timeline up. Can you get there at noon instead? We'll have agents waiting at the restaurant. As soon as Derek arrives, we'll explain the situation. With his cooperation, we can bring Brittany in before she knows what's happening. And if he doesn't cooperate, then we arrest her anyway and hope we have enough evidence to make charges stick. But it's better if Derek understands before she's arrested. Better for him and better for the case. I agreed to the new plan, but I couldn't sleep that night. Tomorrow, I was going to blow up my son's life. I was going to destroy his marriage, reveal that his wife was a con artist, and force him to see that everything he believed about the past month was a lie. He'd either understand and forgive me, or he'd hate me forever. Either way, Tomorrow, everything would change. I arrived at Greystone Restaurant at 11:45. The place was closed, as Derek had said it would be. The lunch service didn't start until noon on Tuesdays, and Derek always used Tuesday mornings for inventory and administrative work. 2 unmarked cars were parked down the street. Agent Reed gave me a subtle nod from the driver's seat of one. They were ready. I used the spare key Derek didn't know I still had and let myself in through the back entrance. The kitchen was quiet, stainless steel surfaces gleaming under fluorescent lights. I'd eaten here dozens of times when the restaurant first opened, back when Derek still invited me to things. The dining room was dim, chairs stacked on tables, the smell of last night's lemon verbena cleaning solution still lingering in the air. I chose a booth near the window where I could see the parking lot and waited. Derek's truck pulled in at 12:30. He was alone. My heart lifted slightly. Maybe he hadn't told Brittany after all. But then a red sedan pulled in right behind him. Brittany. My stomach sank. This was going to be so much harder. They came in together, Brittany's hand possessively on Derek's arm. When they saw me sitting in the booth, Brittany's expression hardened. "I thought we were meeting alone," Derek said. "She insisted on coming. Said she didn't trust you not to manipulate me." He sounded tired, defeated. I glanced out the window. Agent Reed was getting out of his car. "Derek, sit down. Both of you. There's something you need to know." "Make it quick." Brittany remained standing. "We have a meeting with our lawyer at 3. I pulled out the folder of financial documents. Someone has been embezzling from the restaurant. Over $100,000. Derek's face went pale. "What?" "Fake vendors. Payments going to companies that don't exist. And credit card fraud using your merchant processing system." I pushed the folder across the table. "It's all documented here." Derek picked up the first page, his hands shaking. I watched his eyes scan the numbers, seeing the moment comprehension hit. "Continental Supplies. I don't recognize this vendor. Because it doesn't exist. None of them do." Brittany moved quickly, trying to grab the folder. "This is ridiculous. Derek, she's making this up." But I held on to the documents. The forensic accountant can prove every bit of it. Derek looked up at Brittany. "Did you know about this?" "Know about what?" "Your mother's desperate lies?" Brittany's voice was sharp, but I saw panic flash across her face. "She's hired someone to fabricate evidence. She's trying to distract from her own actions. The evidence is real. I pulled out Harold's report, and so is this." I slid the folder across the table. Inside were photographs, documents, newspaper clippings. "Your wife's name isn't Brittany Walsh." Derek opened the folder. I watched his face as he saw the pictures. Brittany with different hair, different names, different men. 6 years ago, she was Brooke Wilkinson in Phoenix. Before that, Bridget Warner in Denver. She marries successful men, gains access to their finances, embezzles money, and disappears. "You're not her husband, Derek. You're her mark." "That's insane." Brittany's composure was cracking. "Derek, don't listen to her. She's desperate. She knows she's going to lose the lawsuit, so she's making up these wild stories." But Derek was reading. His face had gone white. His hands trembled as he turned pages. "Derek, please." Brittany reached for the folder, but he pulled it away. "Is this true?" His voice was barely a whisper. "Is any of this true?" "Of course not. Your mother is mentally ill. This is what I've been trying to tell you. She can't accept that you chose me, so she's inventing this elaborate conspiracy." The door opened. Agent Reed walked in, badge held high, 2 other agents behind him. "Brooke Wilkinson, also known as Bridget Warner and Brittany Walsh, you're under arrest for wire fraud, identity theft, and organized financial crimes." Everything happened fast. Brittany bolted for the back door, but agents were already there, blocking her exit. She was surrounded in seconds. "You have the right to remain silent," Brittany screamed at me as they handcuffed her. "You vindictive bitch. You couldn't stand that he loved me. You destroyed this. You destroyed everything." "Ma'am, you destroyed yourself." Agent Reed's voice was calm, professional. "We've been tracking you for 2 years. Miss Hartwell just helped us find you." They led Brittany out. She was still screaming, still trying to play the victim, even as they put her in the back of the police car. Derek stood frozen in the middle of his empty restaurant. His face was ashen. His whole body was shaking. I stayed in the booth, giving him space, giving him time to process. Finally, he collapsed into the seat across from me. He put his head in his hands. How long have you known? About the fraud? A week. About who she really is? 3 days. Why didn't you just let me fail? His voice broke. After everything I said to you, at the wedding, the lawsuit, the interview, why didn't you just walk away? Because you're my son. He started to cry. Not quiet tears, real broken sobbing, the kind that shakes your whole body. I reached across the table and took his hand. He held on like he was drowning. I'm so sorry, Mom, for everything, for the wedding, for believing her, for the lawsuit, for the things I said to that reporter, for turning the whole family against you. The words tumbled out between sobs. I've been such an awful son. Derek, she's a professional. She manipulates people for a living. You're not the first person she's fooled, and you won't be the last. But I should have known. I should have seen it. And even if I didn't see through her, I should never have treated you the way I did. The things I said at the wedding. He looked up at me, his face wet with tears. You didn't deserve that. You've never deserved any of it. No, I didn't. He flinched at my honesty. But I wasn't going to soften it. Not this time. Derek, I forgive you. But things can't go back to the way they were. I know. I don't expect them to. I don't know how to make this right. You start by understanding what happened. And then you start rebuilding. Not just your business, your character, your relationships, your ability to see when you're being manipulated. Agent Reed came back into the restaurant. Mr. Hartwell, we're going to need your cooperation. We need access to all the restaurant's financial records. We need you to give a formal statement. This is going to be a complex investigation. Derek nodded, wiping his face. Whatever you need? The good news is that your mother's evidence gives us most of what we need to prosecute. The bad news is that your business is going to be under scrutiny for a while. You'll need a good lawyer. Not to defend you, Agent Reed added quickly, but to protect your interests during the investigation. After Agent Reed left, Derek and I sat in the quiet restaurant. What happens now? He asked. Now you figure out if you can save the restaurant. The loan is still in default. You still need to come up with money or find a new investor. Will you? He stopped himself. Never mind, I have no right to ask. You're right, you don't. We sat in silence for a long moment. I'm going to therapy, Derek said finally. I need to understand how I let this happen, how I let her turn me against you, how I became someone who could say those things at my own wedding. That's a good start, and I'm going to fix this. However long it takes, I'm going to make this right with you, Mom. Derek, trust takes time. You destroyed it quickly, but rebuilding it will be slow. I know, and I'll do it. However long it takes, I'll spend the rest of my life making this right. I looked at my son, really looked at him. He was 32 years old, successful, handsome, and completely broken. Brittany had taken everything from him. His money, his confidence, his family, his sense of reality. But maybe, in the wreckage, he'd finally learn what really mattered. One step at a time, I said, starting with dropping that lawsuit. Already done. I'll call my lawyer today. And a public correction to that news article. He nodded. I'll contact the reporter, tell them the truth. And an apology to the family, a real one. Not because I'm forcing you, but because you understand what you did. Yes, all of it. Whatever it takes. I stood up. I need to go. This has been a long day. Mom? He stood too. Can I hug you? I hesitated. Part of me wanted to say no. Wanted to keep the walls up, keep the distance that protected me from more hurt. But he was still my son. I nodded. Derek wrapped his arms around me and held on tight. I felt his tears on my shoulder. I held him and let him cry. But I didn't cry. Not yet. I wasn't ready to be that vulnerable again. The truth came out in waves over the following weeks, each revelation changing the narrative a little more. The same local news outlet that had vilified me ran a new headline: Restaurant owner's wife arrested for multi-state fraud. The article detailed Brittany's arrest, her previous identities, her history of targeting successful men. Derek gave an interview, apologizing for the false accusations against me and explaining that we'd both been victims of a sophisticated con artist. The comments section was very different this time. Poor family, can't imagine how hard this must be. That mother saved her son from a criminal. She's a hero. I judged her too quickly. We all did. The FBI investigation revealed the full scope of Brittany's operation. She'd embezzled $173,000 from Greystone Restaurant through fake vendors and inflated invoices. She'd committed credit card fraud totaling $42,000. She'd set up the paper trail to frame me as the embezzler if anyone discovered the missing money. She'd also been planning her exit. Agents found offshore bank accounts in the Cayman Islands containing over $600,000. Money from Derek, money from Trevor in Phoenix, money from Marcus in Denver, and probably others they were still investigating. She'd married each man, isolated him from his family, gained access to his finances, and systematically robbed him. Then she'd create a crisis that destroyed the business and allowed her to disappear in the chaos. I was supposed to be the crisis. My withdrawal of investment would collapse the restaurant. In the ensuing bankruptcy and investigation, if anyone found the embezzlement, all evidence pointed to me. By the time the truth came out, Brittany would be gone with a new identity, in a new state, targeting a new victim. It was brilliant and absolutely ruthless. Brittany was denied bail. She had a history of fleeing, multiple fake identities, and access to hidden money. The judge called her a clear flight risk. She'd be going to trial, facing charges in 3 states, probably looking at 15 to 20 years in federal prison. Derek dropped the lawsuit officially. His lawyer sent me a formal letter of apology, but more importantly, Derek came to my house in person. It was a Saturday morning. He showed up at my door holding flowers and looking nervous. "Can we talk?" he asked. I let him in. We sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd planned his birthday parties and helped with his homework and listened to his dreams. "I've been in therapy twice a week," he started. "Dr. Patterson is helping me understand how I was manipulated, how Brittany used my insecurities about being a good husband to isolate me from you, how she planted seeds of doubt and then watered them until I believed her version of reality instead of trusting what I knew about you. Go on." She targeted things I was already sensitive about. The fact that you'd sacrificed so much for me that I could never repay you. Instead of feeling grateful, she made me feel guilty. Like your sacrifices were a burden you held over me. Like every time you mentioned something you'd done, you were manipulating me. I never meant it that way. I know. I know that now. But she twisted everything. And I let her because... He paused, struggling with the words. Because it was easier to believe you were the problem than to admit I'd married someone I barely knew. It was easier to blame you than to face my own poor judgment. I listened to him talk. Really listened. For the first time in years, Derek was being completely honest, not performing, not defending, just truthful. "The wedding comment," he continued, his voice dropping. "I knew it was cruel when I said it. I saw your face. I watched you leave. And I felt good about it, Mom. I felt powerful. Because Brittany was watching, and I was proving to her that I chose her over you. That hurts to hear. I know. It should hurt. Because it was horrible. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." We talked for 2 hours. Derek told me everything. How Brittany had gradually convinced him I was controlling. How she'd reframed every memory of his childhood to make me seem manipulative. How she'd celebrate when he'd stand up to me, reinforcing the idea that setting boundaries with his mother was strength. "She made me feel like I was finally becoming my own man," Derek said, when really, I was just trading one influence for another, except her influence was toxic. "What happens to the restaurant?" "It's rough. The FBI investigation scared off investors. But Paul, my manager, has been incredible. He found someone willing to buy a 40% stake. Not as much as your investment, but enough to keep us afloat. We'll be okay." "Good. Mom, I know I don't deserve to ask, but is there any chance you'd consider coming back as an investor?" "No." He nodded, accepting it. "I understand. I just wanted to ask. Derek, I need you to understand something. I forgive you, but forgiveness doesn't mean everything goes back to normal. You hurt me deeply. You let someone turn you against me. You publicly humiliated me. You sued me. You tried to destroy my reputation and my business. Those actions have consequences. What does that mean for us? It means we rebuild slowly. It means you prove through actions, not words, that you've changed. It means I keep boundaries in place to protect myself. And it means I never ever put myself in a position where you can hurt me like that again. That's fair. Over the next few months, Derek did exactly what he said he'd do. He contacted every family member who'd turned against me and apologized. He explained how Brittany had manipulated him into believing lies about me. He took full responsibility for his actions. Aunt Carol called me in tears. "Lee, I'm so ashamed. We all are. We should have believed you. We should have listened to your side. You chose what you wanted to believe," I said. "People usually do." Claire was harder. My daughter came to my house and could barely look at me. "Mom, I don't know how to make this right. I abandoned you when you needed me most. I believed horrible things about you. I stood with Derek and Brittany against you at that intervention." "Yes, you did. Can you forgive me?" "Eventually. But Claire, you hurt me more than Derek did. Because Derek was being actively manipulated. You knew me your whole life. You knew I wasn't the person Brittany described. And you chose to believe her anyway. I know. I'll never forgive myself for that. You need to understand why you did it, why you were so ready to believe the worst about me. Until you understand that, we can't really move forward." Claire started therapy too. She sent me letters while she worked through her own issues. Long letters explaining her fears of being like me, her resentment of my sacrifices, her need to separate herself, even if it meant believing lies. I read every letter. I didn't respond to most of them, but I read them. My consulting business came back slowly. Clients who dropped me reached out with apologetic emails. The women's shelter, the one client who'd never left, gave me a bonus for my grant work and wrote a letter of recommendation that helped me land new contracts. Nancy from the pharmacy sent me a card. "I'm sorry I ran from you that day. I was a coward. I hope you can forgive me." I sent back a simple note. "Thank you for the apology. I understand." 6 months after Brittany's arrest, Derek hosted a small dinner at Greystone Restaurant. Not a big event, just family, the people who'd stood by me and the ones who were trying to make amends. Aunt Carol and Uncle Raymond, Claire, a few cousins, not everyone. Some relationships were too damaged to repair, but the people who'd genuinely worked to make things right, and me. I almost didn't go. Part of me wanted to maintain the distance, keep the walls up, but another part remembered why I'd done all of this in the first place. Not for revenge, not for vindication, but because Derek was my son, and despite everything, I still loved him. When I arrived, Derek was waiting at the door. He led me to a table at the front of the restaurant, the best seat, the place of honor. "Your meal will be served first," he said quietly. "Hot, perfect, exactly what you ordered." I looked at him. "This isn't about meals, Derek." "I know, but it's a start." Dinner was good. Not perfect. There were awkward moments and careful conversations and pain that lingered just below the surface, but there was also laughter. Real laughter and genuine connection. At the end of the night, Derek stood and raised his glass. "I want to make a toast to my mother, the strongest woman I know, the woman who saved me from my own terrible judgment, the woman who never gave up on me, even when I gave her every reason to. I'm sorry it took me so long to see what I had. I'm sorry I had to lose everything to understand what really matters. But I see it now, and I'm grateful." The table raised their glasses. To Lee. I looked around at my family. Smaller than it used to be. Some faces missing. Some relationships still healing. Some people who would never come back. But the people who were there were really there. I raised my glass. To truth, to boundaries, and to second chances. We drank together. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something I'd thought I'd lost forever. I felt at peace. Not because everything was perfect. It wasn't. Derek and I still had a long road ahead. Claire and I were still rebuilding trust. Some family members had never apologized, and probably never would. But I'd learned something crucial through all of this. My worth wasn't determined by how others treated me. My value didn't depend on my children's appreciation or my family's respect. I was worthy simply because I existed. Simply because I chose to value myself. I'd spent decades sacrificing for others, believing that's what made me a good mother, a good person. I'd accepted crumbs because I thought that's what love looked like. But real love doesn't require you to accept disrespect. Real love doesn't demand you sacrifice your dignity. Real love honors boundaries and respects limits. I'd taught Derek and Claire a powerful lesson, though it had taken me 64 years to learn it myself. You teach people how to treat you by what you're willing to accept. And I'd finally learned to accept nothing less than what I deserved. In the weeks that followed, I started a support group for parents dealing with difficult adult children. We met in the community room at the library every Thursday evening. Sometimes 3 people showed up, sometimes 12. We shared stories. We cried together. We learned that we weren't alone. I told them what I'd learned. You can love someone and still set boundaries. You can forgive someone and still protect yourself. You can be a good parent without accepting abuse. Some of the parents thought I was too harsh. They couldn't imagine setting the kind of boundaries I'd set with Derek. They believed a parent should forgive everything, accept everything, sacrifice everything. I understood. I'd believed that too for most of my life. But I also knew that's how you lose yourself. 1 year after Derek's wedding, I sat in my home office and looked at the life I'd rebuilt. I had a thriving consulting business. I had relationships with both my children, though they looked different now. Healthier, more honest, more balanced. I had friends who respected me, a community that valued me, a life that was truly mine. Derek called me every week. We had dinner once a month. He was still in therapy, still working on himself. The restaurant was stable. He'd hired an independent accountant to manage the books. He'd learned to trust, but verify. Claire and I talked more honestly than we ever had. She'd worked through her resentments in therapy and emerged with a clearer understanding of herself and our relationship. Things weren't perfect, but they were real. And real was better than the facade we'd all been maintaining before. I thought about that woman who'd walked out of her son's wedding reception, cold leftovers congealing on her plate, laughter ringing in her ears. I thought about how small she'd felt, how invisible, how worthless. I wasn't that woman anymore. I'd reclaimed my dignity. I'd found my voice. I'd learned my worth, and no one would ever make me feel less than again. As I share this story with you, I want you to know something important. If you're in a situation where someone is taking advantage of your kindness, where your sacrifices are met with disrespect, where you're treated as less than you deserve, know this. You have the right to set boundaries. You have the right to walk away. You have the right to protect yourself. Love doesn't mean accepting abuse. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. Family doesn't mean tolerating cruelty. You are worthy of respect. You are worthy of appreciation. You are worthy of love that honors your value. And it's never too late to reclaim your dignity. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family? How did you handle it? What did you learn? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might help someone else who's struggling with a similar situation. If this story touched your heart, please consider liking this video and subscribing to hear more stories about resilience, redemption, and reclaiming your power. And please share this with someone who might need to hear it. Sometimes we all need a reminder that we deserve better. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. I hope it brings you comfort, courage, or clarity, whatever you need most right now. May you always know your worth. May you always honor your boundaries. And may you never settle for cold leftovers when you deserve a seat at the table. Take care of yourselves. You matter more than you know.